and welcome to the final part in the series. This is probably going to be the last time I'm going to talk about Silent Hill, probably until the remake comes out. So before we begin, I want to give some quick context in case you have not seen my previous videos in this series. First things first, this is a crafting channel. So when it comes to talking about something that's not crafting related, you're going to see them together. And second, but more importantly, before we begin, I want to reiterate some points from my previous videos so that you have an idea of where I stand and why I stand there. In late 22, we had our very first Silent Hill transmission. This included the announcement of Silent Hill 2 Remake, but more importantly, that they had brought back Akira Yamaoka and Masahiro Ito to assist in the game's development. Now on paper that sounds great. Ito was Silent Hill 2's art director, and he was in charge of everything from monster design, concept art, the way the levels looked, set pieces, etc. Ito had a very unique art style, and if you're familiar with Silent Hill 1, 2, and 3, his art is oozing out of every corner of those three games. Even more so if you've seen the Art of Silent Hill videos, like Usagi, Fukuro, and the very underappreciated Kinoko. And with Akira Yamaoka, not only was he in charge of the music, but also the sound effects in general. Now, in my previous video on the subject, I mentioned that while, yes, these games were a collaborative process, there were three key pillars to this team. You had Hiroyuki Owaku, Masahiro Ito, and Akira Yamaoka, the writer, art director, and composer. They are the mind, body, and soul of Silent Hill. Or at least when it comes to Silent Hill 1, 2, and 3. Now, while both Akira and Masahiro are back, they're not really in their respective roles, not fully at least. Akira is remixing and remastering the music and some of the classic sound effects, which is great, but as far as I can tell from everything I've read, Masahiro Ito is just on monster design and monster design alone. This had worried me when it was announced, and as things have progressed and they've shown us more gameplay footage, a lot of my fears have been reaffirmed in the art department, which I'll get into that topic in this video. But more importantly, without Hiroyuki Owaku, I worry about the story's translation. While I'm sure Akira and Masahiro are both consulting and giving input, I still worry about that subtle detail in character and story being lost, or worse, misinterpreted by Bloober Team. Especially when it comes to the subject of expanding on these characters and this world, which again, I'll cover in this video. But I don't want to start this video off by just ranting about subtle nitpicks. So I want to do something that I haven't really seen anyone else do yet. Let's do a quick overview of everything we've seen so far in order of the game's progression, in comparison to the original. So let's talk about what I'm doing here real quick. So when these things are made, they're not 100% perfect in their casting process. Usually you're dealing with a two-piece cast mold, and then whatever imperfections there are in that seam between those two pieces, there's leftover resin, which we call flash. So I'm scraping all that off. Usually you do this first thing before you assemble anything, and I forgot. It's been so long since I've actually done this. I completely forgot about looking for flash. I thought that maybe since I had a lot of these pieces already assembled that maybe I had already done it, and I didn't really see any actually to begin with. But after I assembled the entire thing, I noticed a few spots here and there. So I had tried to attack them as best I could. Now with everything assembled, I have a lot of things in the way, so I'm not going to get them all as clean as I want. But thankfully, most of it's in places that you're not going to see. So for example, when this guy sits, it's going to be sitting like this. But there's maybe a couple spots back behind the arms here, so you're not going to see that. Same here, back in his armpits, there was some leftover spots that I dug out where it looked like it had kind of filled in where it shouldn't have. I got most of that out. It's not super clean, but when the figure is sitting, he's going to be sitting like this, so you're not going to see back behind him. I'll talk about something else real quick too. So the orange, purple, red, I guess the red stuff that I'm using here, I use automotive spot putty in this because one, it dries fairly quick, usually within like 10 minutes it's dry, and it's softer than the PVC plastic or the resin, or I can't remember what these things are actually made of. It's been so long since I built these things. So when it comes time to filling in gaps, it's great for filling in because these things don't come in one whole piece, you know, like the head's one piece, the body's one piece, and you got to attach it all. But then you have a seam in between the two, so you got to fill that in with something. I like automotive spot putty because, again, it dries so fast and it's softer than the plastic, so it'll sand first. The downside is that it will start filling in all those tiny little cracks of detail, and then you cannot get that out. So you have to be very careful where you put it. You can see around the neck, I did a ton too much. So any details that you see around the neck right there, with the spot putty filled in, when this gets painted, you'll never see those details again. So that was my bad, my screw up. I'm gonna have to live with it. So, up next we're gonna be painting. Got about as far as we can with everything else. Normally I would give it a layer of primer first, but I seem to be out of that, so I'm gonna bite the bullet and just paint it black and start painting. This is gonna be a scary part because I have a ton of paint. Unfortunately, I haven't used it in so long. I have a feeling probably at least half of it's all dried out. What a nightmare. And my brush collection isn't as good as it used to be either. I used to have a nice collection of really good brushes. These from either from Michaels or AC Moore. Somehow they ended up in a mix with all these Walmart brushes, and I can only hope that they're as good as they used to be. Last but not least, I'm going to need a water bottle for all this. So this is the cheapest and easiest way I like to deal with this. Rather than getting a nice cup or having a dedicated cup, I always have a water bottle. And the ridges here on the side, it's good for cleaning your brushes. Run across it. Works pretty good. When we bought the house, when we were doing house shopping, I made sure that my main criteria, was that the basement had everything I need for a craft room, including basement sink. All right, let's get back to work. All right, so we have the same exact opening intro as the original game. Obviously, camera angles are different, and the layout of the bathroom itself is different. In the original, the door is to the front, and there's kind of an open walkway. This time, there's a door on the side, And instead of the camera opening up from the sides of the urinals, it's picking up on a cockroach. I think the cockroach is more of like a red herring to kind of get people to think of PT, because that's how that started out. But like I said in my other videos, I don't think these cutscenes and these shots that we're seeing are all 100% final. So there might be a good chance that by the time the game comes out, it will start out with the same exact intro camera angle as the original, you know, where it's doing that sideways pan up the side of the wall. One interesting thing I did not notice before is that James's ring is missing from his hand. I don't know if that was there originally in the original game. I'd have to go back and look to see, but it is kind of interesting that you can see the indentation of it, but it's obviously not there. But while this is obviously reminiscent of the original game, I think they wanted to highlight this to kind of just show off the facial animations and the expressions that they can get from the actors and the mocap and all that. And then we have James exiting the bathroom. Everything looks almost spot on. Again, minor small details. Obviously the car placement's right, the car model looks correct. The sign in the back, you can see it still says "We Come" instead of "Welcome." Everything about this opening shot looks dead on. But if you do a few comparisons, you can see that the light pole is farther down. I think it should be farther up, I think, to where the original door was on the PS2 version. And the fire hydrant's been moved closer to the sidewalk along the guardrail, and there's a little lookout station right there in the middle, when before it was just a guardrail that went the entire way across. No major changes that really affect anything yet. It seems like how James acquires his map this time around is going to be different. In the original, he pulls it out of his car. He doesn't seem to have one with him this time, so he's getting it off of a stand of some sort that has a giant display of the map. Where this is actually in the game, I'm not 100% sure, but I'm going to put it here right after walking out of the parking lot, which would be the most sensible place to put it. Then, of course, after our long walk down the wooded path, we run into the cemetery where we run into Angela. I know a lot of people have critiques about her new look. I don't think she looks that bad. I think what it really boils down to is just her turtleneck. If you compare the two, the new version, the turtleneck is the whole way up, and I think that makes her face look fatter because it now blends with her neck. That's the turtleneck in general. I don't think it's so much the model or the actress or whatever. If you look at the original, her turtleneck is kind of sunken down and kind of like lays on her shoulders rather than around her neck. I think that changes the illusion of how wide the face looks. It could also be the lighting too, because I know later shots that we see, her jawline doesn't look as weird either. It's a weird thing people are picking on about. I honestly don't care either way. Then after talking to Angela, we continue down our path. This time we get to see a little bit of the barn, which was Silent Hill Ranch, I believe. It's only a really quick shot we get to see some lumber. Hopefully on a second playthrough we can pick up our chainsaw there. And then this next shot, I believe this is the part right after the dirt path, and you start going down that little paved road. I do believe there is a spot where the road actually does detour as well, if I remember right. Yeah, the one part I'm thinking of, it's blocked off by a chain link fence, and it just says danger, keep out construction area. This one here says no parking. It doesn't necessarily mean that that's where this is, but I'm putting it here in this order because that's what I think this is. Then once we get in town, then we start exploring a little bit of the area that we're allowed to, which isn't a whole lot to begin with, because pretty soon James ends up seeing a giant pile of blood on the road and starts to investigate. In the original game and in here, he sees a shadow in the fog. Assuming it's a person, he tries to find them to get more directions, information, or whatever. Eventually in the original game, this leads him up to the end of an alley, and there's a under construction overpass kind of thing where you kind of go into a tunnel. That's where you get the radio and your first weapon. But in this short clip here, we can see that that is what that is right there. But for some reason, the developers decided to detour us off to the side to add a little bit more rather than just ending it there, which originally I thought was a bit excessive, but as this plays out, you can see that this is a brand new tutorial mission, more or less. James learns how to open up doors, how to crawl under things, how to interact with items. And this is where we have our first monster encounter. In my personal opinion, I think the original is far superior, not because I'm just being nitpicky, but I think on like a cinematic level, it works way better. It's in the dark, it's all shadow, it's standing up, so in the fog it looked like it might have been a person, and then in the scene of the cinematics for that, it looks like someone is standing up, like maybe a homeless person or whatever, and then as it starts to move forward, you're like, okay, there's definitely something wrong with this person, and then when you finally start to see it, it's like, oh, this is a monster. But this scene here, it's a lot weaker in my opinion. The initial shot of it standing up in the background isn't even intimidating, it's just kind of like shambling, and then it just immediately trips and falls on its face into a pile of boxes. I mean, it makes it seem like not even a threat. And then the way James picks the board up out of the window, it's just like, it looks like it was just placed there for him, rather than in the original, there's a sense of urgency to it. You know, he's looking around frantically, he grabs the nearest thing, and he's pulling and tugging until he finally breaks it free, and then he's able to use that as his weapon. Which is something I might end up nitpicking here. It is in the animations. Not so much that it's bad acting and stuff, but it seems like in this case, it was a prop set there for him to pick up. But in the original, you know, there's like, he's struggling to get it. I might get into this later on too, because there are several other scenes where it's very obvious stage acting. But after the fight's over, then your progression continues. What I do like about this change is that you're no longer backtracking like you were in the original. In the original, after the fight, you had to go back the way you came to the intersection you were at to then continue on your way. This one, you exit out another portion of the building, down another street. You're obviously injured because of the fight you just did. And right next to you is a car where you can both learn that you can not just smash a window out, but also obtain items. So there's a whole line of tutorials that you're being taught here, which is pretty cool. The whole thing works out in a very fluid manner. There's no interruptions, and it sends you on another road where you can then continue on your path to continue the story. It also seems like it might be a good way to prevent you from backtracking as well. That way you can only go forward. The previous locations are then probably locked off from you. And then this is followed up by finding a body on the road with a matchstick for Neely's bar. I believe it works out insanely similar as well in the game. Another cool thing to note is that if you look very closely to what this body is wearing, it is wearing the same exact coat as James and the same pants. In the original game, you find several bodies throughout the entire map. One by the bridge, another one up against a fence. Then the most obvious one, that is the most famous one that everyone knows of, is the one in the chair in front of a TV in the apartments. All of them have James's body. As to why, that is totally up to debate or your own personal interpretations. However you want to view that, it's entirely up to you. It could be asset saving, or it could be something deeper, or it could just be how the world works. Maybe it's showing himself for some reason. You know, you could go even crazier and say that, you know, maybe he's stuck in a loop and these are all other Jameses that have failed their mission. That's a stretch, obviously, but, you know, just throwing that out there. Let's see, then James picks up a note. I'm not going to point this out too much, but there's some broken English in this. If you're reading this, leave this place is not what it seems. There is another side to it, hidden behind a rest in his paper. Sometimes you just hear to look behind. Sometimes you just hear. It makes no sense to me, but I don't know. I don't know what's on the other side of that paper, though. Maybe it's a puzzle. Highly doubt it. That's some broken English, though. And from there, there's a few more establishing shots. I believe we'd probably end up seeing all of these on our way to our next destination. We see the Silenthill post office, which we have never seen before. Let's just cross our fingers that we don't see the postman from Silenthill Downpour. It would be really nice if we keep those games as far away from the original as possible. And then we finally arrive at the Woodside Apartments. There are some noticeable differences. In the original, the fencing went the entire way across. This time, there's fencing around everywhere but the main entrance. Once inside, the layout is obviously different. We can see a little office with what looks like mailboxes for everybody. And we have a shot of James going into that little office. Looks like this time around we'll be visiting more apartments, or at least they'll be dressing them up more. This one's saying welcome home. You can see a little cake on a stand in the center of the room. This is the scene where James acquires his flashlight. In the original game, it's on a mannequin that's wearing the same clothes that Mary would wear. And after James would equip it, a mannequin on the floor would then come to life, which is what we're seeing here. We then continue to explore the apartments a little bit more. This looks like a brand new puzzle of some sort. You can see there's a lock, and when the hand turns, it drops a ball of some sort. I'm going to say that's probably an attachment to a doorknob. We have another mannequin. This one's laying in a bathtub. This is just set dressing from what it looks like. Just something fancy to put somewhere. And then we uncover our clock puzzle. In this version, James has taken a drape off of it. Weirdly enough, though, the clock face is already open. Your main goal in the apartments is to find a key to unlock that. So things might end up playing out differently here. But it does then show the clock face spinning, which would be you adjusting the time to the right spot to unlock the clock so that you could then push it aside. But in the original, you still needed a key to open up that glass cover. So you go to progress by going upstairs. You see a key behind a set of bars, and when James tries to reach for it, that's when we get introduced to Laura, who kicks it out of our hands and runs off like a little brat. And from there, your goal is to try and get onto the other side of those bars to get that key. You go into another room, I believe on that same floor. This is where you find the handgun in the shopping cart. And then you hear the scream at the end of a hallway. This is when you first see Pyramid Head behind another set of bars. And then when you enter that apartment, that's when you see another body in a chair. In the original, you could never see the face because the camera was always behind. This time around, I'm assuming because the textures are so much higher, polygon count is so much higher, it'd be very easy to tell that this body was James. So there's a bloody rag over the head of this character. But I bet you anything, if when the game comes out, take a look, it's probably wearing the same coat and pants as James. And then after that, you go down the hallway, enter another apartment, and this is where you enter the moth room. There's a bunch of moths flying around. There's moths on picture frames. Looks like someone had a collection of some sort. And there's a hole in the wall that you have to reach into. Reaching in there gets you the clock key. So you travel back to the clock, unlock that face to the clock, and then that is when you can adjust the time on the clock. That reveals a hole in the wall. You can then travel to the next apartment through that, which then allows you to get on the other side of the bars that you first saw Pyramid Head in, who you'll get to see again after you go down the hall, down some steps, down to the next floor, and in one of the apartment buildings, you run into Pyramid Head messing around with some other monsters, which is the scene here. This plays out a little bit different. Instead of James just seeing it immediately and then going straight for a closet, which if you think about it, it'd make more sense for him to just go right back out the door. In this one, he's also just as oblivious and goes over to a counter, starts reading a paper. All the meanwhile, 10 feet away, Pyramid Head's just going to town on some monsters. But we got James doing the same exact thing, running into a closet and using the gun that he had just acquired. Once Pyramid Head gets too close, and he fires off a few rounds, and Pyramid Head walks away. The next puzzle you do then will be the juice box puzzle. This is where James takes a giant box of juice and throws it down a garbage chute to dislodge some garbage in a garbage chute. I believe the only thing that was in that was a coin for the coin puzzle that you do later. This open alley shot, I believe, is probably the redesign for that outdoor garbage chute section, considering this is the only time you're in or around anything apartment related in the daytime outside of the courtyard, which we see later. So I'm putting this shot here to assume that this probably is where we will go back outside to get that garbage bag from the garbage chute. And with that coin acquired, we now go to the courtyard with the empty swimming pool with the baby carriage in the center. In that baby carriage, I believe, is another coin for the coin puzzle. And in the courtyard, you can access another apartment building where we then find Eddie. You see the dead guy in the fridge, and then a really quick shot of James opening up a door to Eddie in the bathroom. Side note, this is the most we've seen of Eddie so far. Then after all that fun, we go back to the main apartment building section and use a fire escape key to jump from one building to the other. So like I mentioned earlier about the animations, if you look at the shot, you see that he's going from door to door. They're at the same height, so he's just stepping across. If you look at the original one, he's going from a door to a window, so there's some verticality to it. To do this in mocap for the original game, they had built the scaffolding. If you look at all the behind the scenes stuff from the original game, you can see that they built structures for the mocap actors. From everything we've seen so far with this new game, I haven't seen them build any actual structures for the actors to act on, which I think might be why he steps straight across from flat surface to flat surface, instead of stepping from a door up into a window and having to hop up there. I mean, I get it, they're redesigning these areas, but if you're doing any redesigning, you'd think you'd want to elevate things a little bit rather than simplify them, if that makes any sense. But anyway, back on topic. That very next room is the room where James shoves his hand down a toilet to pick out a wallet that has a password in it, which goes to a safe that is in the living room of that apartment. And that little safe is what we're seeing here. Up next is our meeting with Angela, and you can kind of see here that what I was talking about earlier with her, she looks better here. I think it might be the lighting, but her turtleneck is a little bit lower, so you can make out her jawline and facial features a lot better. It doesn't all blend together, so her face doesn't look as fat. Her face looks skinnier now. I don't think it's a model change. I think it's just, the lighting and the turtleneck and all of that. And we got James holding Angela's knife after she leaves the room. And shortly after that, we get to finally do our coin puzzle, which gives us access to the Lynn house key, which lets us go meet Pyramid Head for his first fight, which is what we're seeing here. If you examine the opening of the floor to the left, you can make out that exact shape that is open for the stairwell in that scene. I think the only major difference we're seeing in this room is that the entry door is now a double door. Or I might just be seeing it wrong. It's kind of hard to tell. But after fighting Pyramid Head, he goes downstairs, opens up the door, drains all the water, and we can finally exit the apartment building. Going down this alley is then when we get to meet Laura again. In the original, this dialogue scene goes on much longer. I think they edited this just for the sake of time. The way they edited it, in terms of the way the dialogue flows, is kind of weird. I think they could have done it better. But I've heard people complain that oh, the dialogue doesn't make any sense, it's too dumb. But I'm like 99% sure, because everything after this point is kind of chopped up a bit in terms of editing. So I think they cut this up some just for time's sake, because so far they've been adding to everything, not so much cutting things away. But after interaction with Laura, then we make our way to Rosewater Park, where we finally get to meet Maria. We don't get to see a whole lot of the park yet. So far, all we've seen is this little dock slash gazebo. So I'm not entirely sure if this is off the waterfront or on land, because there were gazebos in Rosewater Park in the original, but out in the grass. And after talking to Maria, she decides that she's going to be following James. I'm placing this shot in this order because of two reasons. One, this is the only time that we are with Maria outside during the day. As far as this being a cut-off road section, the only spot I can think of off the top of my head that is accessible with her would be the bridge that would lead up to the hotel. Originally, if you play the game right, you tend to skip Pete's Bolorama and go straight on the road that would lead you to the hotel. This would be alongside the Historical Society, and as you pass that, the bridge leading to Northern Silent Hill is out. There's also bodies there and notes scattered on the floor. But you decide to turn around, and that's when you go into Pete's Bolorama. From there, Maria decides that she doesn't want to enter, because, spoiler alerts, she might not be able to interact with other people other than James. Not to go too deep into her character at this point, but if you notice throughout the game, in the original game, Maria does not interact with anybody but James. She either willfully or against her will is pulled away when it comes to interacting with other characters. And in the case of Pete's Bolorama, she decides to stay outside because inside is Eddie and Laura. But after James goes in, talks to Eddie, he sees Laura, tries to follow her, and as he exits, Maria comes running around the corner, saying that there was a little girl, she couldn't catch her. And at this point, James and Maria team back up, and they go try and hunt down Laura. This leads them down a back alley where Maria says that Laura had escaped through a gap between two buildings. I'm placing this scene here because I think this is probably where she says, oh, Laura went through there. And if you look, James is trying to inspect the window, but he can't open it. So Maria decides that she's able to open up another door through 100 locks in her boots, bra, and pockets. I'm placing this shot here for that. I have no clue where this shot actually lines up, but considering it's a back door to somewhere, it might be to that building. I doubt it, but I don't know where this shot's from. But after James and Maria make it to the other side of the buildings, they see Laura running down the street into Brookhaven Hospital, and they follow in pursuit. And here we see the internal structure is drastically different from the original. Map layout is way different than the original game. But anyway, James and Maria start investigating. We finally get to see a save point in the game. It's exactly the same as before. It's a red piece of paper. I believe it's in the same exact spot in the original game too. There's a office right inside the building for all the bookkeepings and medical records and whatnot. And then we get to hear Laura humming and James following the sound. I'm going to go into this later, but the fact that Maria is even in the same room as Laura, the fact that she's calling out to her, that should not be. Call me a lore nut, but it's more than just the fact that she doesn't. It really affects not just her character, but a lot of like background lore and headcanons for people on how the town actually works. Because, spoiler alert, Maria is a monster, and Laura does not see any monsters. Some people have said, well, in this scene, Laura's not recognizing Maria at all, but the fact that she's in the same room manifested in her presence is still kind of a problem. because it's not just Laura that Maria avoids, she also avoids Eddie and Angela as well. And you could just call it headcanon, but she does it way too frequently throughout the story for it to not be just coincidence. And before we go to the second floor of this building, if you go back and look at the map, you can see that there's a greenhouse section outside the courtyard. In this one dev video, there's a quick snippet of a computer screen where James is inside a courtyard. Like 99% sure this is that courtyard. Yeah, if I remember right, in the original game, I think the patient rooms on the first floor are currently locked off. So once we go up to the second floor, I believe, once we hit one of the rooms, Maria wants to lay down because she's feeling sick. Which I believe is where this part lands, because everything we see after this, in terms of combat and everything, Maria is no longer with us. And to refer back to my last video on this, I don't know if there's been an improvement in the nurses' designs, but they look a lot better in this. There seems to be a lot more splotches. They don't look as clean as they did in the other ones, which really helps in the hallways, especially in the dark when they're lit up by your flashlight, to really make them look uncanny. But anyway, with Maria out of the way, James is out doing his bent needle puzzle, which is a huge collection of puzzles involving a locked chest in one of the patient rooms. I believe it's chained, locked, and padlocked and everything. And around this point, you can then access the roof. There's a letter up there from a patient you read, and once you read it, when you go to leave to go back down the steps, that's when you hear Pyramid Head's knife, and he's up behind you, swings at James, knocks him through a fence off the railing, and he falls down to a spot below. That is what we're seeing here. It's raining outside, which is a huge difference. The only thing that really worries me about this is that you see Pyramid Head in this scene walking back to the open door or the stairway. It might just be a cinematic thing, just for the trailers, but in Resident Evil, Mr. X, Nemesis, they're like constant pursuing enemies. I'm kind of hoping that Pyramid Head isn't like that in this game. I believe he originally was supposed to, but the devs decided not to, which I like, because now anytime he's somewhere in a scene, it's almost like he's progressing the story in somehow, or at the very least restricting James's progression for the sake of story. And because Pyramid Head is a manifestation of James's subconscious, it's almost like Pyramid Head is allowing James to progress, or holding him back, to kind of like push him, nudge him in the directions that James needs to go, if that makes sense. But anyway, like I had said, he pushes James through a fence off the roof, and he lands into the floor below. He goes through the ceiling and lands in a previously locked off area, which is a room full of padded cells, which we see here. And from there, James continues on to continue his puzzles with the bent needle. And once that's done, he's able to then finally meet up with Laura again, which is the scene we see here. And Laura ends up lying to James about having another letter, locks him in a room, which she unknowingly kind of puts him in danger because, again, these monsters were hiding in the ceiling. She could not see them, and they don't come out until after she leaves. Again, reinforcing the idea that she does not see monsters, and monsters do not interact with her. They either stay out of sight, or they're not manifested at all until she's no longer around. Alright, so what I'm doing here is I'm starting everything off with a base of black paint. The whole idea is to get every crack and crevice in this black. It being the hardest places to reach, if I get it first, then everything else I just apply afterwards. I've done a bunch of these in the past, probably about 7 or so, and this has been my technique for every single one. So the way this is going to work is black first, and then I slowly work my way up to the higher and higher elevations with lighter and lighter colors.
eventually ending up with the whole thing painted in the end. The more awkward the shape, the harder it is to actually paint too, because most of the time I'm only holding it by the stick, or once the other side's dry I might hold on from the head, you know, but constantly go over and over every time once it dries. Try and find that one spot that you didn't get yet. You want to kind of water it down just a little bit because you don't want any kind of puddles or buildups, because otherwise it's going to affect your detail in the end. It's a fun process. It's actually the hardest process really out of all of it. After that, it's all downhill from there. It's just easy afterwards. You're just lightly brushing one color, mixing a lighter color, brushing that again. Kind of therapeutic actually, but so far this guy is actually turning out pretty cool. I'm actually looking forward to finishing this. And after defeating the flesh lips in this scene, James more or less passes out. He hears Mary or Maria, one of them, calling him out, and he kind of goes down a stretcher scene, similar to like a Jacob's Ladder kind of thing, where the camera's looking straight up and everything's moving. Also ripped off by Homecoming. Speaking of Homecoming, so after that, we are then in the other world of Silent Hill. In the original, the other world version of Silent Hill is, I don't want to say more subtle, but it has its own unique style. The walls are bloody, doors are wrapped in some kind of draping, a lot of furniture is all kind of covered in drapes. Everything is kind of wrapped up in bandages of some sort. So for example, arm rails are no longer wooden, they're wooden wrapped, kind of like in bandage wrapping or something, if that makes any sense. Mostly to kind of represent Mary when she was sick and in the hospital. This new version has a lot of that. It has the draping, but it also has a lot of floor grading, which the original did not have. We see a new set piece in the hospital. I'm going to assume this is a puzzle of some sort. Again, this doesn't look like Silent Hill 2, this looks like a Homecoming thing. Why they're changing the other world in Silent Hill 2 to look like Homecoming, I don't know. That's not Silent Hill 2, that's Homecoming. I'm trying to hold myself back from my rant here, but not many people like Homecoming. Why are we making this drastic visual change from Silent Hill 2's other world to Homecoming's other world? But back on topic before I go on a rant, there's then this shot of James knocking down a cabinet through a hole in the wall. I'm gonna place this as the scene in the basement when you go downstairs to get the copper ring for this one door. That's when you run back into Maria, and she gets very mad at James for not looking for or not caring about her. That copper ring, of course, is one of two that goes on two mannequin hands that are sticking out of a 3D door. That door we see in this shot here. But before we can open up that door, we need the second ring, we need the lead ring. And for that, we need Maria's help. There's a fridge in the day room that James can't open himself. With the help of Maria, we're able to get it open and get the final ring. I'm placing this shot as that because this is going to be one of the last times that Maria is actually with us in the game, at least as a companion. Because after opening up that door, we are then led down a hallway where we are then pursued by Pyramid Head. And in this shot here, we see James running to the elevator and trying to hold it open for Maria to catch up. And again, the design of this door is not from Silent Hill 2, it's from Silent Hill Homecoming. Again. Okay, let myself cool down a little bit again. Anyway, so once Maria is gone, for now, James exits the elevator and the hospital is still in its nightmare state. This has a new room available for him. It has a map inside of it with a mark for an item of interest, and it has a key for him. And while he's investigating this, out the window, he sees Laura outside taking a stroll. It's obviously dark outside now, which is why I always assumed in this game that darkness would correspond with the other world, because it's still the other world inside the hospital. And up until this point, it has not been dark on the outside. That's why I'm placing these shots here, because this is the only time in the game when it is night outside, which is our trip from the hospital to the Historical Society. Here we get to see the Mandarins in one of the very few spots they are in this game, which is on South Street, going from the hospital towards Neely's bar. And this section here seems entirely brand new, but I'm placing it here because, again, this is the only nighttime scene in the game when you're going from the hospital towards the Historical Society. It looks like you're able to progress from one side of this gap in the road to the other, going through the diner itself, which we see here where James is fighting a nurse inside of this diner, where, again, just like in the original, you don't see nurses outside of the hospital until after you leave the hospital. And considering it's nighttime outside and you're seeing nurses outside, I'm placing this as right after the hospital. That said, this otherworld gap in the road that we're seeing with the structures and the fencing and all that, that's Silent Hill 1, which is not Silent Hill 2. There's no scenes like this in the original Silent Hill 2 game. The only part I can think of outside that has floor grading is through South Street with the Mandarins. But if this is an extension on that, then I can accept it. I'm also placing this one scene with Angela here. This seems like an entirely new scene where she's saying that you shouldn't be here. I had to bump up the contrast and the brightness and everything to really see what's in the background, to see where they're even at. But between her and James, it's very clear that they're outside and around some kind of steps. My best guess is that she's in Rosewater Park. Now, as for why, I don't know. It seems like we're getting a lot of new content with Angela. I don't know if they're going to add a system where in the original, James could kind of redeem himself or damn himself, depending on the player's actions throughout the games. But we could never save Eddie and Angela. They were always doomed from the start. If they are adding extra scenes, it would be kind of interesting if they added this, that you could save them as well, or at least guide them on a path to some kind of redemption. Make it like a good plus 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 ending. But that's all hypothetical. And the next shot we have is James looking down a hole. Now there's 3 drops, I believe, we make in Toluca Prison into the labyrinth. I can't remember off the top of my head. I think it's 2 into the prison and 1 into the labyrinth. Either way, I don't want to sit here and nitpick, but this looks bland. Of those 3 in the original game, they are all visually striking or visually interesting at the very least. The very first one you enter looks like a prison cell. The doors are barred. There's not really anything in the room except a giant square hole that you can walk around and you can pretty much trip into it, more or less. The way the camera's angled and everything, it looks imposing. It looks intimidating, but it's also calling. It's the call of the void manifest. The second hole is a vertical hallway, and you're jumping through a gate that would be in that hallway from a door in the floor. It is trippy as hell. And the third hole is right off of a morgue. There's a dead body and a stretcher right next to you. It looks like the hole was meant for dumping bodies in. But visually, it looks interesting. It's striking. It's scary to look at, scary to be around. You feel like just standing there, someone's going to dump you in too. This, what we're seeing for the Silent Hill 2 remake, is just an open square. There's nothing around that's visually interesting. And this is from one of the newest videos, and it bothers me because it doesn't look interesting. but this is a topic that I want to dive into deeper later on. Up next is the prison. In this shot from a behind-the-scenes video, you see James walking through a crack in the wall into what looks like an office of some sort. The wall's chained off, so it looks like some kind of reception thing. The reason I know for a fact that it's the prison is because if you zoom in, the coding on the top left of the screen says prison. And this next shot looks insanely cool. We see a mannequin climbing up the walls of the prison cells. I don't think we've ever seen mannequins act like spiders before, but it's an insanely cool addition that I am very happy with. Also, the grating on the floor in this spot, I'm okay with, because there's grating in the ceilings, gratings on the walls. It fits this area right. So adding this little touch is harmless. It doesn't break the aesthetic of the area, in my opinion. And then we have this scene of James running to a double door. I'm about 99% sure this is the doors that lead to the giant courtyard with the noose and that hangman plaque. And these two quick shots from the combat trailer, I'm placing them in the labyrinth / prison as well, mostly because of all the dirt on the floor itself. In the prison and especially the labyrinth, the floor has a ton of dirt. The closer you get to the labyrinth, the more dirt is on the floor. Then we have the scene of James opening up a door to where we can barely make out Pyramid Head in the background, dragging, or at least holding, a lying figure by its feet. This is most likely Pyramid Head's room. All the stuff in that room looks like the kind of stuff that you would see in Pyramid Head's room in the labyrinth. And there's this really quick shot of a lying figure being shot at by James through the door. If you look in the background, you can see the water all throughout the floor, giving the color of the walls and the watery floor definitely the labyrinth. The scene with James opening up the door, talking to Angela, I'm 99% sure this is the new lead-in to the Abstract Daddy fight, because the background behind him is pretty much identical to the hallways around that room in the labyrinth. It looks like they're changing it. Maybe her room is going to change or transform, or perhaps we're going to like slowly delve into her other world. Maybe it's going to like somehow change with it, because as she's sitting on the floor, you can kind of make out the dirt that you normally see on the floor in the labyrinth, but at the same time, you can see her bedroom. There's a closet, there's a teddy bear. The shot from the door, you can see bedroom wallpaper. It looks almost like underneath the closet door is a hatchet, and I believe her father was a lumberjack, so everything's kind of matching up to fit this scene. Or it's kind of a red herring and this is something new from her. Either way, it is still new technically, because before you would just see the room transformed in the Abstract Daddy. So either way, this is kind of new, it's diving into her stuff. I think it's kind of cool. And then we have this close-up shot of the Abstract Daddy. It looks like it's on the floor already, so I don't know if this is a death scene or like a close-up flash that we're getting, kind of like we do with the flesh slips before they come out of the ceiling. And we have a shot where it is attacking James up against a wall, followed by it pushing him through a wall. I'm thinking that this is going to be the new lead up for their fight, because following this in the trailer is those shots of James fighting the Abstract Daddy. Now, that said, I like the way the Abstract Daddy looks in this. I like how he's able to stretch himself up like before. He could do that in the original game as well. You didn't see it that often, but he did. What bothers me, though, is this new level design. Again, it is not reminiscent at all of the original fight room, but now we have spinning gears, exhaust pipes going up and down. This is Homecoming again. This is more Homecoming Otherworld. This is Silent Hill 2. This is not Homecoming. And like I said, I'm going to try and get into this later without going on to a rant right now. So, back on topic again. After fighting the Abstract Daddy and leaving Angela, the very next room is the Hangman's Puzzle. One room has several people being hung, and you have to read a puzzle and I believe figure out who was falsely accused. And then another room farther down is a bunch of empty nooses, and you have to pull them in a certain order or something like that. I can't remember off the top of my head. That then gives you a key, I believe, to unlock a set of handcuffs on a valve, which we see here. I'm adding this shot of the bugs in the labyrinth because it looks kind of like that labyrinth area. I don't know what they're doing with the bugs right now, but a neat thing I did notice both here and in the hospital shot is that anytime James points a flashlight at them, they scatter from that light. Pretty cool, almost as like a foreshadowing for, there's a scene later in the labyrinth where you're locked in a room. And that room, and then at that time, your flashlight, the battery's gonna die. And when you put in a new light bulb, you put a new battery in, flashlight comes on, room is full of these bugs. And they're more or less ticking at your life bar as you're trying to find the combination to this door that you are now locked in. It would be kind of interesting that you need the flashlight to get them to scatter off of the keypad. That would be cool. And then, so that would be an incentive to turn the flashlight back on and to see the keypad. I'm going to assume that them introducing this is good foreshadowing for that puzzle / gimmick coming back in this game. And I'm going to put this quick little fight scene with a lying figure in this spot because it's hard to tell, but if you look in the background, adjust the brightness and contrast, one, there's a lot of blue smoke. There's only one time in the game you see blue smoke, and that is when you are fighting Eddie. Or at the very least, when you're in Eddie's other world, when you're interacting with Eddie in the prison, which is right before you leave the prison. If you adjust the brightness and contrast, you can make out some of the stuff that's on the shelving. It looks like a lot of scraps of metal, books. It looks like, I can't tell if it's like a prosthetic for like an amputee or something on the one shelf, but that plus the blue smoke makes me think this is probably right before fighting Eddie. I'm going to assume, or at least hope, that probably some of that blue smoke is kind of like working its way in, and then maybe as you get closer to Eddie, we start seeing more of his other world, which would be the Francis Bacon meat locker stuff. Or maybe we'll see more Homecoming Otherworld instead.
Sir! Hey, you! Where's Joshua?
Yay. But anyway, after the fight with Eddie, we now see James on a rowboat outside of the building going across Toluca Lake. The building looks fairly accurate from what we've been able to see in the original game of the building itself, and the dock for it. We don't know if this is going to be controllable yet, like in the original, or if it'll just be a cutscene. If it is controllable, I hope they add something else to really make it interesting, because in the original, all you did was angle yourself to look for the spotlight from the dock at the hotel, and then just row towards it. And you row long enough, the scene's over, and you're at the hotel. I'm by no means saying let's add fishing, but something would be interesting. I'm adding this one shot of James firing at a mannequin as being part of the hotel. I'm not 100% sure, but considering he's firing at it in what looks like a hallway, the wallpaper on the hallway it's hard to make out, but when the muzzle flash goes off, there's kind of like a floral pattern on the walls or something, but it's not something you normally see in the apartments, especially not in anything we've seen so far, which leads me to believe that this is in the hotel. And then we have this shot of James going through a door. This is, I'm 99.9% sure, this is the scene where James sees Maria again up hanging in a bed frame beside two pyramid heads before they impale her. Or it's him leaving that, because he does look kind of like dejected. He looks very down, so it might be right after that. So it could be either or. It could be him going in there or coming out. In the scene of James dropping to his knees and screaming, only happens in one spot, and it's in that room with the 2 pyramid heads. Now, I did mention this in my last video on this topic, and I guess I'll get into it again. I don't mind redesigning areas, I don't mind them adding new stuff, but if you really examine this room, especially the floor, you can only get it for like a split second on a few frames, but if you look at the floor of the room, in the original game in Silent Hill 2, this room had a giant carpet. It was a fancy carpet. It had it looked almost like stains of Seals of Metatron almost on it, although I don't know how intentional that was, but it was a giant fancy rug. The reason it was a giant fancy rug was because it took place in the hotel. Technically, it took place in the Otherworld version of the hotel lobby, the giant lobby, so it's the carpet from that room. I'm not saying like there's a significance to the carpet, but the fact that the hotel is special to James and Mary, the carpet would help signify that this is the hotel that we're in. If you look at this one, it's just metal plating. It looks like the floor that you see all throughout the Silent Hill movie, or what was inspired by the Silent Hill movie, which is Silent Hill Homecoming. Again, try not to go on a rant, as I will do it later, but this entire thing, everything Otherworld related in this game is screaming Silent Hill movie, Silent Hill Homecoming, and not Silent Hill 2. Silent Hill 2 has its own Otherworld. Why they are not using it, I will get into later. I will get into it. And finally, there's a scene of James ascending some steps. These look like what you would think would be fire escape steps on the side of a building. But considering how high the light is, it being dark, where everything is, there's no reason for us to be going back to the apartment complex where we would see those, and that would be the only place we would see those. There's only one other place in the game that has a ton of fire exit steps that lead up, and that would be the steps that lead up to the fight with Maria. And if that's what this is, I think it could be a really cool redesign of that, because before it's just you go up one spiral and you're there. They can add to this, give you more time to hear some more like monologues from Mary, kind of like in that long hallway, or something similar to that effect. They could even do, say, some Silent Hill 1 stuff where you're going through Alessa's memories, but instead James is going through his memories. So maybe when he goes up a certain way, maybe he has to go through a door because he can't go up the steps anymore, and maybe that door is going to lead him to a flashback. You know, kind of like in the hotel when you get the cassette tape in the library, and you kind of look out the window, and then there's that dialogue that you hear between James and Mary's doctor. I think this would be a great way to do that, especially leading up to the fight with Maria. And yes, all versions of the endings is a fight with Maria. Why people think that the Maria ending is a fight with Mary makes no sense. If you look at Maria as a character, her entire world is James. She wants him no matter what. In all the other endings, she's trying to get James. In one ending, she's trying to persuade him.
But I can be yours. I'll be here for you forever. I'll never hurt you like she did. So why don't you want me?
The other one, she's angry at him because he doesn't want her.
No, James. I won't let you. I'll never let you have your Mary back.
In the Maria ending, where you have Mary telling James,
I know I was a burden on you. You must have hated me. That's why you got rid of me.
that's Maria acting. It's definitely Maria, 100%. Mary is dead. It's Maria. And Maria's doing this because she wants to nail that final nail in the coffin to make James no longer want Mary, so that James will want Maria and get the Maria ending. That's what she's doing. She's manipulating. She's manipulating them to get what she wants.
I want you. I want you with me.
Are you sure?
Come on. Let's get out of here.
But anyway, that is all the shots that we have seen so far from all the trailers, in order as they are in-game.
You'd better do something about that cough.
And because the game will be out in just a few months, I doubt we're going to see another huge dump of new footage. So what major parts of Silent Hill 2 have we not seen yet? For starters, we haven't seen anything of Eddie yet. I think if we do get one more media push before the game's release, I think he will be the focus, much like Angela was in the release date trailer, because we only got a glimpse of him when James was opening up the bathroom door in the apartments, and nothing more. Up next, we haven't seen anything on Pete's Bolorama. This is where Maria stays outside, and James goes in and sees Eddie and Laura. And after Laura leaves and James and Maria pursue, we haven't seen anything on Heaven's Night yet. Some of the original promo videos for Silent Hill 2 showed Maria trying to sleep on the stage floor, so I do hope that this short area gets the attention that it deserves. Not a lot happens in Rosewater Park at night, aside from getting the key to the Historical Society, which would be next in what we haven't seen yet. Originally, it was only a 3 small room building with photos and trinkets and cases. While I'm not expecting a full-on museum in the remake's design, I do look forward to them expanding on it and showing us a little bit more of the town's history. I just hope that they make sure that Misty Days Remains of the Judgment is still the centerpiece of that experience. In the Labyrinth, we have that infamous prison cell scene with Maria, which shows us her ability to change who she is to James. She's Mary in one moment, speaking of Mary's memories.
You were always so forgetful. Remember that time in the hotel?
And then she shows him that she could be the seductive Maria.
So, you're Maria?
I am. If you want me to be.
It's a powerful scene giving a glimpse into what Maria actually is.
It doesn't matter who I am. I'm here for you, James. See? I'm real.
And farther down the prison and labyrinth, we've yet to see Eddie, which means we haven't seen any hints to any of his encounters either, including his fall into madness, and eventually the fight with him. We haven't really seen much of the normal version of the hotel either, and James's struggle to make it to his old hotel room, and his interactions with Laura along the way. There's also the final scene with Angela in the hotel, where she says that her world is always on fire.
You see it too. For me, it's always like this.
And of course, we're not going to see any clips of the final fight with Maria, for spoiler reasons. Of course, you can say that showing everything else would be a spoiler as well, but considering this list is so short, they've already shown us quite a bit. As long as it's provided without context, new players will be oblivious as to what any of it means. So before I continue with some points of concern that I have, I want to say first that I'm by no means a journalist. I don't have all the information, and I might be running on old info. Not to mention that I, just like every other Silent Hill fan, have my own headcanon when it comes to this franchise. So take nothing that I say as fact. These are just the thoughts of a random guy. So alright, back on topic. According to Konami, Ida this time around is only doing the monster designs, instead of being the whole game's art director. And in these new trailers, those new monsters are looking a lot better, especially compared to the older footage. The nurses are looking a lot dirtier and look better in the dark. In my previous Silent Hill video, I talked about how in the original version, the monsters had a lot of these dark splotches on their models, which helped obscure them in the dark, and how the monsters we've seen so far looked way too clean. Well, this time around, it seems like that's been addressed, and even the cleaner looking nurses are covered in dirt, and they look great now in the dark. Granted, I still think the flashlight in this game looks off. The light distribution is just too soft, and it bounces everywhere. Anyone who's ever handled a flashlight in the dark knows that light causes a hard contrast in its shadows, while everything else is kind of blown out from the light. And Silent Hill 2 caught that pretty perfect on the PS2. I don't know if this is because of ray tracing or what, but the light's just too soft. But hopefully that can be adjusted in the game settings. In fact, when we see a lot of these creatures close up in the dark, like the flesh slips and the abstract daddy, they look really good. That is Ito's work come to life, right there. Also, I don't know if it's just motion blur, but in my last video I said that I hope that they'd bring back some of the random borders that we'd seen in the Art of Silent Hill videos. I feel like we're kind of seeing it here from time to time, but we see it with some kind of Jacob's Ladder style head wobble with the nurses, which looks good to me. The only monster redesign that I'm not really digging is the flesh lips. It looks like this time around they added like a fence or grating to the framework, which I think obscures the monster too much. And now it just kind of looks like a box. Maybe as the fight progresses, that portion busts off to show the cancerous mass underneath. That would be pretty cool. Now with the praise out of the way, time for my concerns. If you manage to sit through my 1-to-1 comparison, then you probably know where this is going by now. So every time we compared the original game's Otherworld sections to the remake's Otherworld, there were drastic changes in its designs. Everything I looked up, there seems to be no mention of Ito's input on level design and art design in general. So instead of the Otherworld segments we remember, we're now seeing a lot of Homecoming movie-inspired Otherworld designs. We went from rust, blood, drapings in the original hospital to gratings, chains, and this inescapable orange hue. In the original, every section in the Otherworld area had a color palette. Some rooms were green and brown, some were white and red. This new stuff, from what we've seen, is just orange. It didn't look good in Homecoming, and to be honest, it doesn't look good here either. And I don't think it's just this one scene, because we saw it again on the outside segment by the diner, and then again in the abstract daddy fight. Orange hue, gears turning, pipes pumping. Yeah, I get it, the abstract daddy fight had pistons in the wall, but do we really need to see the machinery behind the wall showing how they work? Silent Hill's Otherworld isn't real space. It doesn't have to make sense. It can break the laws of physics. It's the ultimate liminal space. I mean, I'm sorry, but every time I see Homecoming's design, I start frothing at the mouth, because it feels like the game tried so hard to be the movie, and the movie's Otherworld tried so hard to be Freddy Krueger's boiler room, instead of recreating all of the awesome set pieces and overall great set design from Silent Hill 1. That movie is just hot garbage, and I cannot stand to see its stain on the series still to this day. It's infuriating. And I swear, if I see that fucking horrendous transition from the movie in this game too, I'm just gonna... Ugh. I know in one of the newest Famitsu interviews, the game's producer said that Ito is doing a lot of supervision, but he also said that they've clashed over what he and Bloober wanted for the game as well. So who knows what's really going on there and what we're really gonna get on the release day. I want to keep my hopes up, because Ito designed some amazing set pieces in these games, and I'd hate to see someone else ruin it because they have a hard-on for Christoph Gans. And I haven't trusted Konami in a very long time, because in the end, they're the ones that have the final say over everyone else. Alright, so the plan for painting this is pretty much what I explained earlier when I said about painting everything black first. I'd work my way up in layers. Excuse me. So, if you can see on my computer screen over here, I have an image, a high-res image of the actual in-game model. I'm going to be using that as reference the entire time.
What I'm going to do then is work at the lowest parts first of the body, or of the entire model, paint them in layers, and then work my way up. So in this case, we're going to probably start with the skin, and then probably the what looks like bulletproof vests, I guess, and then the leather on top of this guy, and then the metal, and that should get us the whole way out to the ends. So just kind of like working your way in layers until you're at the very, very top, and then you're done.
My other major concern is with the writing. When they officially announced Silent Hill 2 Remake, they pulled out Akira and Masahiro to let us all know that it was okay. Now, I never really played any of Bloober's other titles, not fully at least, but I am aware that a lot of players aren't fans of their storytelling. I can't speak from experience, but apparently subtlety isn't their strong suit. Now, I don't know what Hiroyuki Iwakuni has been up to all these years, but with this much public distrust in Bloober's writing, I don't know why Konami wasn't able to reach out and get him back as well, at the very least to consult on characters and themes. I went deep into this topic on my last Silent Hill video, so I won't rehash too much, but over the last 20 years, the amount of false information and straight up headcanon in Silent Hill lore has completely taken over not just the Silent Hill community, but every source of information on Silent Hill as well. If you want to hear me complain in depth about how much non-canonical information is all over the Silent Hill wiki, by all means, go see that video. I'm sure Akira and Masahiro are both giving story input, but the fact that they don't have the actual story guy right beside the art director and composer had me worried from the start about the story. And with little snippets of story we've gotten so far, especially with the new gameplay trailer, has confirmed my fears. So far, we haven't seen much of Angela, and we've seen nothing of Eddie, and I think for good reason, because what we've seen so far with Maria and Laura is way off character. And in the case of Maria, it breaks pre-established rules in the town's supernatural workings. While I'm not expecting every bit of dialogue to be the same, I'm expecting them to at least improve or expand upon it. Either these scenes are heavily edited or cut down, because these scenes make no sense, especially within context of where they take place in the game. The scenes in the hospital, the remake's version is not just missing lines of dialogue, but character nuance that the original provided.
Laura, why do you keep running away from me? And how do you know about Mary?
Now Laura isn't concerned about how James knows Laura's name.
Huh? You know my name?
There's no mention of Eddie.
Eddie told me.
That big fat blabbermouth.
And when asking about Mary, there's no setup for James' outburst, or Laura's reaction.
How do you know about Mary?
What's the big deal?
Why can't you just tell me?
You gonna yell at me if I don't?
No, I won't.
Instead, we just have Laura burst out,
Fine, don't believe me. See if I care!
as if there's any kind of pre-established connection between these two characters yet. The conversation goes by so quick that no connection has been made yet. Because in the original, Laura is still always one step ahead of James. This is supposed to be the first time he gets to actually talk with her. It seems like her character is getting a complete rewrite, because in the very next scene, everything from her demeanor and intent are way different. In the original, Laura is more carefree, and her emotions are more intense. When she tells James about Mary's letter, there's a sense of urgency in her voice, and James clings to that energy because it's another clue for him.
Wait, there's something I gotta get.
Later, okay?
But it's really important.
What is it?
A letter from Mary.
Huh?
I wanna go get it, is that okay?
Yes, yes.
This new version, however, she says it's important, but there's no urgency in either of their voices.
But there's something I gotta get. It's important.
What is it?
A letter. From Mary.
What?
I hid it. In there.
Their intent is still the same. to lock James inside a room, but in the original version, it's because she's just goofing around and playing. She doesn't see the monsters like James does. It's not until James has an outburst at her again that she gets angry.
I think I'll just leave you like this.
You snotty little brat! Open up!
Why, you...
Laura?
You hurt me!
And then leaves him locked in the room. In the new version, not only does James seem to not care about getting a clue for the only reason he came to Silent Hill,
Okay, wait here.
but goddamn, now I know what people say when they talk about Bloober Team's lack of subtlety. I mean, how many times is Laura gonna yell, "Ya fart face"?
A big lying fart face. See a fart face?
Laura!
Of course, all the live reactions to the trailer got a big cheer when she said it.
Say the line, Bart!
Fart face. Fart face. See a fart face?
Changes in a dialogue like this, it's nothing major, but the subtlety compounded together can change a character as a whole over time. And one major character trait about Laura is that she supposedly doesn't see any monsters in Silent Hill. This is hinted at in both versions.
There are all sorts of strange things around here. I can't believe you haven't even gotten a scratch on you.
Why should I? Let go!
Sorry, Laura, but I can't let you just run around this place. You might get hurt.
Hurt by what?
It's also hinted at anytime you're around her, because every zone she's in immediately becomes a safe zone. This isn't the case with Eddie and Angela. Not only do they have monsters right outside the doors of the rooms they're in, but we've seen them with their own monsters. Angela's abstract daddy and the bodies that Eddie shot. But with Laura, third floor hallway in Woodside Apartments, no monsters. Back alley from Blue Creek's apartment to the Rosewater Park, no monsters. First floor, Brookhaven Patient Hall, no monsters. Or at least until she leaves us. First floor, Brookhaven Hospital Otherworld, when we see her walking by outside, no monsters. Lakeview Hotel, when we first meet her, no monsters. But once Laura leaves James, now we have doormen in the hallway. When James retrieves his items and goes downstairs to the music box in the hotel lobby, all monsters disappeared and stay gone all the way to room 312. I feel like I'm intentionally leaving one more Laura encounter out, as if I was saving it for last. Oh, right. Pete's Bolorama. Upon entering the building, Maria protests and refuses to enter, choosing instead to stay outside and wait. You know, the same lady who earlier, just one zone ago, begged James not to leave her alone with all these monsters.
Me?
You were gonna just leave me?
No, but...
With all these monsters around?
No, I just...
Now she wants to be left alone with all those monsters.
I didn't come here to play, you know.
Hurry back, okay?
What is it that makes her choose that solitude and danger over just coming inside? Oh, right. It's because this is what Maria actually is. Let's talk about Maria. Let's talk about what she is, how she works, and what her and Laura can tell us about how Silent Hill's supernatural power works. So I said I was going to start everything from the base layer and work my way up. Kind of notice I did everything in a dark brown. The reason for that is because multiple parts have the same like starting colors, and then as it goes up, those colors start to change from tan to reds to, you know. So I started everything that used the same base color and hit all of them at once. Saves time, don't have to go back and accidentally touch up something else, because last thing you want to do is hit a dark brown over a finished tan, you know. So hit all the base colors first if you can, and then bring them all up together. It's a weird layering process. It's kind of hard to explain, actually. I never really thought about it. It's one of those things, I guess, you just trust the process. Turning out pretty good so far, though. It's not 100% clear where Maria came from, but given all the information we have from the first 3 games, there are 3 schools of thought. One is that Maria and some, if not all monsters, used to be people, or at the very least, was transformed from something else pre-existing in town. 2, that these creatures are manifested by the town's supernatural power out of thin air. And 3, that people are just seeing things like a hallucination. There's evidence for all of them, but most of that evidence can be interpreted in multiple ways. For example, the biggest one people like to use is the dialogue with Vincent in the church's library in Silent Hill 3.
You come here and enjoy spilling their blood. And listening to them cry out. You feel excited when you step on them and snuff out their lives.
Are you talking about the monsters?
Monsters? They look like monsters to you?
Vincent's anger towards Heather over killing these creatures doesn't necessarily mean that he's saying that they are or were people. Later in the game, he remarks to Claudia that the aesthetic of the other world is in bad taste.
If this really is the work of God, then I'd say she has lousy taste.
And more towards Claudia's liking.
Although I admit that this atrocious scenery is all yours.
Meaning that this is a perspective thing. I might love the art of Francis Bacon, but it might terrify somebody else. It's perspective.
I kind of like this one.
Heather asks Claudia about the monsters in the beginning of the game.
Those weird monsters?
And she responds with just,
They've come to witness the beginning.
Does that mean that they're just cult members coming to a mall of their own free will? Did they ride in on the Silent Hill bus for a field trip with Claudia as they sang the Silent Hill song? Or does Claudia, just like Vincent, see these creatures as something holy or angelic, gracing us with their presence? After Harry dies in Silent Hill 3, and Claudia tells Heather that
He's the one who killed your father. I merely gave the order.
does that mean that this is a twisted cult member? Or does Claudia have a level of control over these creatures in the other world?
I don't have powers like you two.
It can go either way. It's never really made clear. Even all the way back in Silent Hill 1, before Lisa transforms, she says,
I get it now. Why I'm still alive even though everyone else is dead. I'm not the only one who's still walking around. I'm the same as them. I just hadn't noticed it before.
This too could go either way. She could be saying that she's the only one left to turn into a monster, or she could already be dead, and this is just a memory of Lisa, a manifestation of who Lisa was, which explains why she's trapped in the hospital, why she couldn't leave, why Harry would sometimes randomly teleport to her in a room. She could mean that her, just like the other nurses, are manifestations drawn up by Alessa's subconscious. Another bit of evidence for people just seeing things is in Angela's final scene. She confuses James for her mother.
Mama! Mama, I was looking for you. Now you're the only one left. Maybe then I can rest. You're not my mama. It's you.
And later, James says,
It's hot as hell in here.
For Angela to turn around and say,
You see it too. For me, it's always like this.
which it wasn't in all of our previous encounters with her. And because of that, you could say that she always sees fire and James didn't, or that the fire just gradually increased as she progressed through the town, and now it's always like this. it can always be interpreted in several ways. Back on the subject of Maria, the main bit of evidence people use for Maria being someone else beforehand are through posters in the game. There's a poster of what looks like Maria in Heaven's Night at the start of Born from a Wish, and there's a Heaven's Night poster in the opening bathroom with Maria's photo. So you could say that she started out as a dancer from Heaven's Night and was changed by the town. Or you could say that those posters, just like the rest of the landscape in the game, is manifested there for the character. If she's supposed to look exactly like Mary, she wouldn't have been looking like that originally, so why are these posters using her exact likeness now, instead of who she was then? In Born from a Wish, given the fact that it takes less than an hour to complete, it's safe to say that this side story starts around the same time that James walks into Silent Hill. This could be when she was born, maybe the poster on the bathroom wall are at least partially real, and it inspired James's idea of Maria, or rather the town's manifestation of her. In my opinion, when it comes to the subject of what the characters see and experience, I think it could be a little bit of all three. I mean, it wouldn't make sense for James to see holes in the floor that don't exist, and then proceed to jump down them, but it makes sense that Angela might see the wrong person. So what's the point that I'm getting at with all this rambling? The original games were very open-ended in terms of how the town works with its manifestations of monsters and the other world. They were usually pretty vague, but they still had rules and patterns. For example, we might not know exactly how monsters are manifested to life, but we know how they work. In Silent Hill 2, we know that the monsters are manifested for specific people, pulled somehow from their subconscious, and then to stay exclusively around that specific person. In other words, James sees his monsters, Eddie sees his, Angela sees hers, and Laura doesn't see any. And on rare conditions, there can be overlap, like with Eddie's victims or Angela's abstract daddy. But we only see them within close proximity, as they are dealing with them in some way. For example, we never see Eddie's monsters alive. We only see the aftermath of when he's killed one and he's still present. And it's the same with Angela. After the stairway scene with her, once we turn around and leave the room, if we try to go back, the stairway is gone, replaced with the hotel. The burning stairway is gone because Angela's gone. In the case of Maria, we don't know her origin for certain, but we do know how she works. We know that she can die and be reborn. We don't know how she comes back, but we know she does, and she retains her memories and consciousness throughout the process. We know that the longer she exists, the more memories she gains from Mary. In Born from a Wish, the moment she learns James's name, when Ernest says,
"That James, he's a bad man,"
she replies,
James. Yes. I know.
He's looking for the you that isn't you.
Watch out. The gap in the door. It's a separate reality. The only me is me. Are you sure the only you is you?
He's looking for the you that isn't you.
and she already has memories of Laura before ever meeting her. When examining Amy's bedroom, she sees a teddy bear and says, "I bet Laura would love it. She loves bears." Laura? Who am I talking about? So we know that her memories aren't being pulled directly from James, but possibly Mary herself somehow, because these are things that James doesn't know. As Maria gains more memories, we see a shift in her personality. Who Maria is at the start of Born from a Wish is not the same person that James meets in Rosewater Park. She's changed. She's evolved. She was born with a basic yearning to not be alone and to be with someone, if only just to be around them. It's why she tries so hard to see Ernest Baldwin in the Baldwin mansion. both Ernest and his daughter Amy are dead. They are either ghosts that are haunting the mansion, or possibly just memories being drawn up by the town. I believe this to be more of the case because Ernest and Amy are almost like a mental training for Maria to later care for James and Laura, to fill the role of Mary as those memories of Mary slowly take over. As the story progresses, not only does Maria gain more memories of Mary, but she also begins to take on her physical illness as well, needing to rest in the hospital and take medication. And later, after her second death, having the same disfigurement as Mary in the prison cell. After her first death in the hospital, the next time we see her is in the labyrinth, in a prison cell. I believe this is the most real that we see her as who and what she really is, from a character perspective. By this point, she's gained a lot, if not all, of Mary's memories, and we see her shifting between herself, Mary, and whatever James wants her to be. The scene reminds me a lot of Heather, actually, in Silent Hill 3. Her memories of her past life slowly creeping in as the game progresses, and by the end, Heather remembers all of it. Her life as Alessa, her life as Cheryl, and who she is now. Which, now that I think about it, are they both not born from the town? Heather more so through Alessa's will, while Maria is from the town itself, in the aftermath of the events of Silent Hill 1. My understanding has always been that Alessa was more of a medium to the town's power, rather than being supernatural herself. She could tap into it, and even slightly control it. It wasn't until after Dahlia and the cult's rituals that connection she had got blown wide open, opening a floodgate of spiritual and psychic energy, resulting in the uncontrolled mess that Harry Mason encounters in the first game. I'll never understand why people continue to mix up the lore of the games with the movie, because in the games, Alessa didn't do all of this in a spite of rage. The monsters in Otherworld were pulled from her subconscious by the town. That's why every monster in Silent Hill 1 was related to Alessa in some form. That's why the locations and their Otherworld designs were so tied to her memories. And after the end of the game, when Alessa is gone, so are her monsters, and so is her hell. But that spiritual and psychic energy still lingers and flows freely now through the town. This is why and how it's able to now draw upon those specific individuals within Silent Hill 2. If Alessa was able to split herself in two with the power of the town, and then again create a new reincarnation of herself at the end of the game with that same power, it makes sense that the town can also manifest a living being like Maria. Heather being a lot more pure and real, because Alessa consciously willed it via her connection with the town, but Maria, she most likely was manifested in the same sense as a monster, hence the reason she turns into one at the end of the game, almost in a similar fashion, if not in the same exact way as the memory of Alessa in Silent Hill 3. And if Team Silent had the time, it would have been the same with Lisa as well in Silent Hill 3. Supposedly she was meant to be in Silent Hill 3 with Valtiel, but due to time constraints, the Fukuro model was reused in her place. So now we have an idea of what Maria is, a monster manifested by the town's spiritual psychic energy in the likeness of Mary and slowly giving the memories of Mary. Unlike a normal monster, it seems like her full creation is a slow process in that regard because she's more complex. And when she dies, that energy that made up who she was stays contained somehow in spiritual form, and the process begins again, where she's then physically manifested again, and then again, and then again. Pyramid Head being another form of this. This creature probably isn't as sentient as Maria, but still more so than your average monster. He has intent, he has drive. Similar to Maria, he's also born from a wish. While Maria was born from a wish to see Mary again, Pyramid Head was born from a wish for James to see himself be punished. This is why every encounter we see with Pyramid Head, he's killing monsters. Much like Maria's training with the Baldwins, Pyramid Head is training to kill Maria to punish James. We first see him as a glowing red figure behind bars in the room next to those bars, which allows us to get to the other side, has a dead body inside, a body of James. There's always been a lot of theories about this, and I have no concrete evidence as to what it means. Could Pyramid Head have been born out of this body? Was this his first kill? Was this James' doppelganger put there for this new Pyramid Head to kill? Who knows? We see Pyramid Head again a few apartments down, this time assaulting more monsters in a kitchen. Pyramid Head is learning, less so much as Maria, but it's still learning what to do. When he encounters James for the first time, he also seems confused. This is the only time we see Pyramid Head flail his arms around and moving in this manner, almost like he's still learning how to walk, getting accustomed to this form. Then when he approaches James in the closet, there's almost this sense of curiosity when he grabs his helmet. Then again, we see him at the end of the apartments, assaulting another monster, before walking away and opening the path for James to continue. One interesting note about Pyramid Head's fights in this is that they're all time-based. He has no health bar, he leaves or dies after a specific time. I don't believe this was an act of laziness, because the other bosses in this game do have life bars. To me, this design is a part of his character. He doesn't need to be defeated, just wait it out. His fights seem more like a test of how much James wants to live. Even with his few encounters in the wild, he is invincible. James can't kill him. That's not his purpose. So, both Maria and Pyramid Head are manifestations of James's subconscious wishes and desires. They both seem to have specific roles to play and rules to follow. And every encounter can teach us a little bit about those roles and rules. In terms of interactions with Pyramid Head, the apartment fire escape, the hospital rooftop, the hospital basement, and his final fight, in all those scenes, Pyramid Head is acting as a guide for progression. You can't leave the apartment without his help. You can't access a portion of the hospital and then later see Laura without his help. In all of his non-confrontational moments, it's still a sign of progression, that James is going in the right direction. When we see him in the apartment hallway behind bars, to progress, you need to enter the room right next to those bars. The hospital basement, he's focused on Maria, not James, although that spear can get you both. And he's herding you down that hallway into an elevator that automatically closes on James so that he can continue on his own. When in the Historical Society, we see his portrait, and then in the very next room is our stairway to the prison and labyrinth. In the fight with him at the end, you can't leave the room until he allows it. The fight again is another timed event. You don't need to fire a shot at him. And when he feels that James truly no longer needs him, does he finally finish himself off and gives James the keys to exit and progress forward to his final confrontation with Maria, where Pyramid Head hopes that James now has the fortitude to not just see her for what she is, but also stand against her. I don't think that this makes Pyramid Head good and Maria evil though. Throughout everything we learn from the game, she is a conscious being, but the town itself has her programmed to want James. It's all she's allowed to know, and she runs on that instinctual desire, doing everything in her power to obtain it. We also notice that every time Maria dies, she comes back faster. After the hospital, we don't see her again until the labyrinth. After the labyrinth, we don't see her again until the hotel with Pyramid Head. After Pyramid Head, we see her again in the very next zone, 2 rooms later. Pyramid Head cannot kill her. Not permanently. But can James do it? Yes, but again, not through bullets. While Maria does have a life bar, and you do defeat her in her monster form at the end, whether or not she stays dead is up to your ending. This is because James has to make the same conscious decision to not need her anymore.
Maria, I'm done with you.
Just like he did with Pyramid Head.
I was weak. That's why I needed you. Needed someone to punish me for my sins. But that's all over now. I know the truth. Now it's time to end this.
And Maria knows this, after just witnessing it happen a moment ago with Pyramid Head. Yeah, she was dead during this whole speech and fight with Pyramid Heads, but considering she still isn't dead, let's assume that whatever energy that she's made up of was aware of what was going on. Because in each ending, you see Maria trying different approaches to keep James.
But I can be yours. I'll be here for you forever. And I'll never yell at you or make you feel bad. That's what you wanted.
In all of them but one ending, she fails. James tells her he no longer needs her, and then he finishes her off. But in one particular ending, Maria has a different tactic: to take on the persona of Mary, convincing James that he no longer wants Mary instead.
Don't make excuses, James. I know I was a burden on you. You must have hated me. That's why you got rid of me.
It's true. I may have had some of those feelings.
This time, after James kills Maria, he still hasn't denounced her. And she's able to not just continue to live, but she's able to see James again and be with him. Albeit still trapped in the curse from the town, and she's still afflicted with Mary's sickness. This relationship between James, Maria, and Pyramid Head isn't explicitly stated in the game, but there is enough subtlety in their interactions to extract all this information. And as I've said before, Bloober Team having Akira and Masahiro to consult is good. But without the game's original writer, Hiroyuki Iwaku, how much can we be guaranteed that these characters, creatures, the world, and its workings all be faithfully remade in the original vision, like they said? In the game, Maria has a strong desire to protect Laura, but she never interacts with her.
What about Laura? Did you find her?
In fact, every time she's in the same area as Laura, she seems to find herself in an excuse to not be around her. Outside of Pete's Bolorama, Maria refuses to go inside. She says that she'd rather stay outside because she hates bowling, but we know this isn't the real reason. We just picked Maria up moments ago, who protested that James takes her along, that she didn't want to be left alone.
With all these monsters around?
No,
Yet she chooses to stay outside with those monsters all alone, moments later. This behavior goes against who she is and what she wants, which is to stay by James's side. And after Laura leaves the bowling alley and James follows, Maria comes out of nowhere.
Did a little girl run out of here?
Yeah, she was too fast for me.
Was she? Was she too fast for you, Maria? Later in the hospital, Maria isn't feeling too good and needs to lie down. It's a bit of a coincidence that in that same room is the roof key where you meet Pyramid Head, who knocks you off the roof into a previously inaccessible location that gives you the final clue that you need to solve a puzzle that lets you go see Laura. Sure, it's quite a setup, but you can't run into Laura until Maria separates herself from James. But it's also another convenient setup as well, that the next time James sees Laura again, outside of the hospital, it's right after him and Maria are separated again at the basement elevator. Pyramid Head, this time, holding her back, forcing James to progress alone. Now, if we go all the way back to when I was talking about Laura, I said that if you examine every scene we encounter her in, there are no monsters, or at least not within proximity of her. The hallway outsides are always clear, the room she is in is always clear, and it's not until after she leaves that those monsters show up out of thin air. We don't see any in the hotel until Laura leaves the piano room to find her second letter. James is alone again, and when he re-enters the hallway, he's immediately attacked by a monster. This pattern is there for every encounter we have with Laura. This includes our main two monsters, Maria specifically. If she doesn't have an excuse of her own,
I hate bowling.
Then it's an ailment.
James. Wait a minute. I'm kind of tired.
Or she's taken out of the equation entirely.
Open up!
So this is why this scene in particular bothers me so much.
There. Laura, wait!
It's okay. We don't want to hurt you.
God damn it.
It's a minor nitpick at a glance, but after all the subtle rules that these characters and monsters follow, it becomes a glaring change in not just character, but also how these monsters and the town work. Why is Maria attempting to interact with Laura? Yes, in the original, she had a care for Laura that she didn't understand, due to her implanted memories of Mary, but something always forced her to be just outside of her range.
Yeah, she was too fast for me.
Not to mention just how weird it would be for Laura to see a freaking doppelganger of Mary walking around with James.
It's you!
One argument I heard in favor of this new additional scene is that Laura doesn't respond until after she's hit with James's flashlight, and not to Maria talking. So it's possible she can't see or hear Maria, and that only James can see Maria. I call bogus on this interpretation because James sees Eddie's monsters too, if only in the aftermath of when he kills them. He also sees Angela's monsters and helps her kill one. He visits both Eddie and Angela's otherworld towards the end of the game, Eddie's meat locker, and Angela's burning stairway. The stairway in particular disappearing from existence the moment Angela leaves. These are physical manifestations happening in real time. That doesn't mean people don't see things differently from time to time, like Angela hallucinating James as her mother.
Mama! Mama, I was looking
But saying that Laura doesn't see monsters because they don't exist goes against everything we know about monster placement in the game. If they wanted us to know that she just doesn't see them, then they would have made that obvious by placing them in the same room with her, which never happens. Instead, the monsters and otherworld keeps its distance from her, almost as if she had an aura around her. At the end of the hospital stage, when James sees Laura outside in the streets, it's still the otherworld inside the hospital, but outside, it's normal, albeit nighttime. Another strange observation that I just now thought of is that there are only 2 actual otherworld transformations in the game, and by that I mean an abrupt change from one world to the other, not the slow descent into madness that we see in the historical society to the prison and labyrinth, but in the hospital and then again in the hotel, both of which happens after Laura leaves James emotionally. In the hospital in the original, she leaves James angry after he yells at her for the second time, and she yells,
Why, you...
Laura?
You hurt me!
and then leaves. After that monster fight, James passes out and wakes up in the otherworld courtyard. She's angry at him when she leaves. The next time this happens is after James watches the VHS tape. Laura enters the room, James tells her the truth, and Laura lashes out at him.
I hate you, James! I hate you! I hate you! I hate you!
And when she leaves James, when he exits the hotel room, it's now the otherworld, instantly. It's possible you could say that the town's drawing from her emotions for the otherworld changes on James, at least partially. And if that's the case, the change in the remake of her leaving on a different tone changes that.
There's something in here.
Sure there is. A big lying fart face. See a fart face?
Laura! Laura!
I know, I have a problem. I read way too much into these tiny little things from the original game, and yeah, maybe some of this is just my own personal headcanon, but it bothers me so much to see these changes in character breaking these pre-established rules and patterns set by the original game. Because without the original writer to do hard confirmations on all the small nuances, we aren't getting something faithfully remade in the original vision. I tried to look up to see who actually is writing the script for this game, and the only credits I've seen so far was this lady, who said some pretty confusing things about the original game.
So when making a game with static cameras, you as a designer have much more control over what players sees, where they go, and so on. The change for the third-person perspective was a challenge. That being said, it's a chance for us to expand this world, to show the players new elements that were previously inaccessible, and just make this game richer.
My first reaction to this when the transmission went live was, what are you talking about?
So when making a game with static cameras, you as a designer have much more control over what players sees, where they go, and so on. The change for the third-person perspective was a challenge.
Yeah, there's a few static shots in the game for the sake of atmosphere and tone, but 99% of the game is overhead camera.
Are you confusing me with someone else?
Resident Evil was static camera, but Silent Hill always has been 3D. Always. I'm not trying to put her on blast because usually these games have several writers. I just find the quote to be concerning. To bring up something that's not even in the original game, and for Bloober and Konami to not even notice or flag that bit to be cut or edited, sends off all kinds of red flags in the writing department. I mean, I can only hope that before they sat down and wrote this script, that they wrote out a map of how the town works, how the monsters work, who these characters are, what kind of rules and patterns that they all had to follow in the original game. But without Hiroyuki Iwaki to write all that down for them, who is? I would hope that it would be Akira and Masahiro, but are they going to listen to them? Recent articles state that Bloober and the original team clashed on ideas on what to do with the game, that Akira and Masahiro wanted to change things and Bloober wanted it to stay the same. I've heard people say that this sounds more like damage control, because if you're remaking the game, yeah, we can all expect you to expand on things, and I don't see Masahiro Ito saying that he wants to make a whole new game when he spent the last 10 plus years on Twitter defending the game's canon. Am I worried about this game? Like, 100%. Silent Hill 2 is one of my favorite games, and has been for over 20 years. I still have my original copy, I still play it. I love watching Let's Plays of it. I love seeing other people's interpretations through their own analysis videos. The original Team Silent games have consumed a huge unhealthy portion of my life. So yeah, I'm very worried about this remake. Even more so now since Square Enix has been making the FF7 remake trilogy. That was advertised as a remake, and I loved about 80% of that game. It got the characters right, it dove deep into the characters' relationships and backstories, and then these things kept showing up, the MacGuffin ghosts. And as the story progressed, it became apparent that this was no longer a remake. It wasn't bad enough that they butchered the original final act in Midgar with the slaughter in Shinra Tower being toned down, and redoing the entire President Shinra scene, which was iconic. But once the story changed its focus on the nature of these new ghost creatures, they became the focal point of the final act. And after seeing what happened in Part 2, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, they are now the main focus on the entire trilogy. Fate monsters that control destiny. Anything that happened in the original game was thrown in the background as nostalgia bait. These ghost things take over the game's story so much to the point that the most iconic scene in Final Fantasy VII, you can barely even see it because there's so many of these stupid fucking things on the screen. Square Enix has made me hate Final Fantasy now. And Konami already made me hate the Silent Hill series since 2006. They can't take away the original copies of the game, and as long as I keep my hands on a functional PS2, I can continue to play those games as they were. I just worry that Silent Hill 2 Remake is going to go down the same path as Final Fantasy VII Remake. It might be good, people might even like it, but will it be true to the source material? Will it be a good remake? Or will it be a fan fiction? A sloppy retelling from somebody who does not understand or know the source material? Alright, so am I gonna still play Silent Hill 2 Remake after all this? Of course, I'm gonna give it a chance. I did the same for Final Fantasy VII Remake. Obviously, it disappointed me. Not for the reason you hear most people complain about because it's not exactly like the original. It's like, no, you expect them to add and expand, you know. Silent Hill 2 was like a 8-hour game. Most AAA games these days do not run that short anymore, so it's a given that they're going to expand it out and stretch the runtime. It's a complete shame why they decided not to bring back the writer. You know, that's the whole thing that's really bothering me mostly. That and the lack of really hammering down Ito's art style. I mean, maybe I might be proven wrong. I hope I'm proven wrong, because I really do want to like this game. Not just the fact that I want to like it, I want other people to like it as well. And the fact that they do like it, I want them to like it for the right reasons. I know that sounds like very elitist of me on the surface level, but by that I mean like Silent Hill 2 on the PS2 and the original Xbox is getting harder and harder to come by for a lot of people. I'm glad that I still have my copies because I got them when they came out. You know, not everybody has that luxury, and I haven't hopped on eBay to see what they're worth because I have no intention of buying any because I have my copies, but from what I understand, they go for a lot these days. So the most you have is just a let's play of someone else, so you get to know the story, I guess, but when it comes to video games, we all know that the story is only surface level when it comes to your story. There's a lot of nuances in game design and in gameplay that also tells the story. That's what makes video games so unique. You know, they're interactive. Say, what are you doing? So, I will play it. If I do a review, that's obviously I'm going to need something to do with that because this is a crafting channel first and foremost. If I'm going to do anything else unrelated to crafting, I am still going to craft while I'm doing it. So I'll try and think of something to do that, because I'm pretty sure by the time the game comes out, I'm going to have some thoughts, good or bad, either way. Probably a mix of both. I mean, I point out a ton of negatives, but, you know, there's still some good stuff. There's still a lot of stuff in there that does look good. Mostly the stuff that they incorporated with the original guys. So the Kira's music obviously sounds good. So in short, I'm looking forward to the game. I'm insanely cautiously optimistic. I will play it. If I can find something to craft like this, I will then make a review video in the same format. I'll figure something out, I guess. But anyway, I'm going to be done rambling so I can get away. This was actually the first of the 3 models that I did. So I had to do a ton of relearning on this thing, especially in a lot of the black washing and stuff that I did. It really toned down all the colors, which I guess is a good thing. Small note, this is one of, I believe, 3 monsters in Silent Hill 3 that Masahiro Ito did not design. He had someone helping him out who did the other 3, which would have been this one, the Insane Cancer, and the Numb Bodies. Those 3 were designed by someone else, 1 or 2 other people, I can't remember. The rest were all Masahiro Ito. That said, as much as people hate this monster just because of how freaking annoying it is, overall the design of the monster is very cool. So if I remember right, I believe this person here went on to design the rest of the monsters in Silent Hill 4. So a little bit of trivia for you. Alright, so anyway, we're done. We will finish this video off like the last 2 with glamour shots of our guy here.